In this video, I want to continue what I was speaking about in the video about spiritual principles that lead to the manifestation of wealth. We talked about the idea, the teaching that your thought has to be congruent with a vision of greater abundance and manifestation of wealth, and it has to seep all the way down into your subconscious so that you truly believe it's possible. Then as you speak about what it is that you're going to do, you speak with conviction, and essentially the vibratory field of your word ignites the next level of the manifestation. So you continue from the vision that is internal to beginning to emit the word, speak with confidence, speak with certainty, speak in a relaxed way, and then you follow through with action, and God provides you the opportunities, the situations, the relationships, the insights, in order that your vision can materialize. Not without obstacles. Typically, anybody who does well in business faces obstacles. That's part of the process. But in addition to what was taught in that video, I want to take things a little bit further, and I want to offer you some insight into a really key point. And that key point is the concept of value. You have to remember that money always originates from one source and moves to another. For example, if you go to a retail store and you want to buy a piece of clothing or some food or some equipment, the money that you possess is given to them in exchange for the goods that you want, right? Where did that money come from? That money came from, let's say you are an employee. So you provided some service, paid you at the end of the week in exchange for the service that you provided. Where did the employer get the money? Well, as part of the business that your employer is in, they provide a good or a service that somebody else values. Somebody else contracts with the employer provides the good or the service, and in exchange for that valuable good or service, the money flows from the customer to the employer. And you can just keep backing this out. It's the way that money moves. And in fact, we all know that paper money or coins or whatever really have very little intrinsic value. Somebody has to believe that that piece of paper is going to be valuable, is going to represent value when they want something that they value. So when you understand this and you really internalize it, you hopefully begin to say to yourself, the more value that I offer to a clientele, to an individual, to a situation that already has a source of money, then the more likely that money will flow from that source to me. The reason I bring that up is if I just say, well, value is rewarded with money, that's not always the case, because there are certain professions that are very valuable, but the country we live in or the economy that we're in doesn't value them to the same degree. So there has to be a certain amount of discernment about where you're going to invest your time, invest your energy, and look to manifest the wealth. Here's another example. You could have the exact same house, whatever, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and you put it somewhere 40 miles outside of a metropolitan area on a nice piece of land, but where that house sits, there's one rural road to get there, and essentially it's remote. So anytime somebody who lives there wants to get groceries, they want to get supplies, they want to go socialize, they want to go out for dinner, they have to drive 30 to 40 minutes just to get into town. That house has a certain amount of value to a certain number of people who go, I really value that solitude and that tranquility and that, quote unquote isolation. I like that. Take the same house and put it in the middle of a big metropolitan area on a quiet street, a friendly street, a neighborhood street that is half a block away from a good large grocery store, that is within a neighborhood that has bars and theaters and stores. The value of that house is tremendously greater. Because in the society that we live in, people value the proximity to all that stuff. So the actual physical house is exactly the same. But in one case, somebody will pay $40,000 for the house, and in another case, someone will pay $400,000 for the house. So you have to understand that the value of that is not just the physical entity, it is the location of where that is and what that means for the person's lifestyle. I provide that example so that you can understand that this is not just a rational and logical equation. That there are a lot of factors that go into understanding what people value. And what one person's values isn't necessarily the same thing as what many people value. So when you seek to manifest wealth, you have to examine sort of this value equation from both sides. Because take, for example, myself. I don't drink alcohol. And let's say I saw a great opportunity in a particular neighborhood to open a liquor store. Because I note from talking to people and just checking out the geography that the closest liquor store is 3 miles away. And so there's a great congestion of homes and apartments that are nearby that I could capitalize on the fact that if this, and I see a perfect spot for it, there's a vacant corner store, and I checked out the rent and all these parameters, and I go, this would be a great business opportunity. And probably it would succeed because the people in the neighborhood really value the convenience and they value the alcohol, and so they would come and spend their money at my store. But if I personally don't resonate with that particular business venture, then that's really going to put me at odds with myself in some way, and I don't want to do that. And I encourage you, as you're seeking out your, for lack of a better term, you've probably heard this, your value proposition. You want to make sure that what you want to do has value beyond just your concept of it. You see on these shows on TV, Shark Tank, right? Where these entrepreneurs step forward and go, here's our value proposition, here's our business, this is what we've done so far, this is the demand that we see. And now we are seeking investment from you gentlemen, or you ladies and gentlemen who are successful entrepreneurs. We're hoping that you see value in this so that you will invest in our company and we will be able to go from this level of operation to this level of operation and greater profits, and everybody will prosper. Well, clearly what the entrepreneurs see sitting sort of behind the desk compared to these new people, these new business people who are coming forth, is that there's a discrepancy in the value proposition. The reason the show is interesting is because the people who are being presented to have already proven the understanding and the experience in manifesting wealth, so that their opinions and their perspective and their discernment is very interesting to the rest of us to watch. Are they going to invest? Are they going to present a counteroffer? Are they going to simply check out and not participate? But it's so interesting that the people who are presenting their ideas are so convinced of the value. At the same time, that value has not really been proven. It may have been proven on a small enough scale to go, we think there's something here, but we need more money in order to really reach a greater audience and get to see if our particular product or service really has the value such that many people will buy it. So that show is a real beautiful teaching tool to see this equation lived out. The equation being the greater the value, the greater that the money flows through it. Who determines if the value is there or not? Well, that's part of the mystery. If everybody knew where the population would value the product, the good, the service, whatever, they had that sense of timing, and they were able to put together the product and the service in the precise way that the paying public would like to use it, well, then you have a successful business. So as you are moving through this process, you're aligning your thought, your word, and you're beginning to take action. As you do all that, that's like spiritually programming yourself to say, okay, I have a vision, I'm going to do well. I begin to speak it, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to begin investing in real estate. I'm going to begin investing more aggressively in stocks and mutual funds. Or I'm going to change my profession and move from this level of income to that level of income. The question now becomes, what exactly am I going to do? And this is where you have to begin to go, what value can I bring such that the world, or you could even say such that God, through people, through the success of my business, will reward me with financial abundance? You have to have an idea. You have to have a plan. You have to have something that differentiates you so that your product or your service or your business or your location or your particular spin on something provides a value to a paying customer such that that abundance is provided to you. A couple of things to just think about as you're investigating this, because I have operated several businesses. What you have to do is you have to find the thing, the product, the service, the idea, the approach to money, the value proposition that resonates with you such that you can have the flexibility that's going to be required in order to succeed. Why do I say that? I say that because in all the businesses that I've ever run, I went in with a certain idea. I had a pretty clear sense about what I was trying to do, and within a certain amount of time, generally within the first few months, you realize whether or not what you're presenting is really of value to people. Just because you thought it was of value doesn't necessarily mean somebody else is going to pay for it. But in every case, I was able to adjust because within a short period, I was able to see what aspect of the business that I had created was valuable. And in short order, I dropped the other things that were not really yielding, and I focused my attention to make the thing which seemed to be the most valuable, the most available. You also have to investigate the price that you're charging for it, because somebody might find incredible value in a service that's priced at $100, but if you try to sell it at $250, they don't see the value in that. So in that case, the concept is fine, the idea, the good, the service, but you have to figure out the price point at which people say, yes, there's good value in that. And as a general rule, the less choices that people have, the more that they will value your good or your service. If you take, for example, buying and flipping real estate or buying and renting real estate. Many times when you get involved in real estate, the first thing people want to find out is this a buyer's market or a seller's market? And that simply comes down to supply and demand. If a lot of people put their houses on the market, that means there's a lot of inventory available, and therefore the buyers have more choice. And when the buyers have more choice, every house tends to stay on the market a little longer because people are checking out other choices and they see that they have a lot of choice, so they don't have to rush to buy the first thing that appeals to them. That's known as a buyer's market. Now, the opposite is true when there's very low inventory. When there's not a lot of houses that are available, then a house comes on the market, and if you have 5 people who are interested in it, they know they have to move quickly, and they have to sometimes bid for the highest price. So the value of that property is increased simply because of the lack of supply. So as you consider what it is that you want to do in order to create a value proposition, consider how saturated is that market. It's very simple. If you want to choose a profession, like let's say you wanted to become a lawyer because you've heard that lawyers do really well, and you are looking at the various types of law, and you go into law school and you realize, wow, every year there's 300 new lawyers in this particular school, and if at the end of every year, let's say 100 lawyers graduate, is there enough work for somebody like me to start my own law firm and do well? In a case like that, you can choose, you look at your particular field of law, you go online, you examine how many lawyers are in that particular area, that field, and you determine if this is something that you want to get involved with. Just because there's a lot doesn't mean that you should get out of it. But you should recognize that the more competition that there is, the harder it is to establish your value over the next attorney. The same thing is true of many, many professions. On top of all that, research, you want to find something that actually matters to you. You want to find something to do that you find meaning in delivering that product and that service to the world. I think that's really important. Not everybody necessarily cares about that. But this is a video for people who want to grow spiritually. So you have to consider, if you're just going, well, I don't really care about this and these people and these customers, I just see an opportunity and I want to make money at it. I think when you enter into it from that perspective, you'll find temptations to do things that karmically might not be the best. I have found success in business because, above all, I want to provide something that is actually really, really good. I want to provide a service. I've typically done well in services. I don't do a lot of product-related businesses. But in the last business that I ran when I was teaching meditation, I was constantly refining the courses and rewriting the manuals and updating the recordings and trying to get the feedback from people to understand where they saw value and where they saw room for improvement in the courses. And that really mattered to me because above all, I wanted people to complete the courses and their lives to be different in a positive way. That really matters to me. I like to coach people to approach it in that way because that kind of sincerity and that kind of love that goes into what you do aligns you with the love of God. And when you become aligned with the love of God, then you tend to attract grace to you. So I would recommend that you find something that is meaningful to you, where you really care deeply about delivering the best possible version of this product or this service. And let's say you want to get involved in real estate and you want to buy a house and you want to fix it up and then you want to rent it. There are people, the term is slumlord. What does a slumlord do? They buy a cheap property in a crappy neighborhood and they just make it livable and then they just get tenants and they don't really care that much. And, it's like they find tenants who are willing to tolerate a place that's decaying and they get the money, as much money out of it as they can for as long as they can. Now that's a stereotypical explanation and I can't say I know anybody who does that. But I think when we think in terms of slumlords and what we've seen in films, is that that's the reputation that they have. They don't care that much about the tenants. They don't care that much about the property. They care a lot about the money. I suggest the opposite, that you don't care that much about the money. I mean, you have to have some discernment about where you're spending money and what the level of investment for the return. You have to run the numbers to make sure that you're not operating on a loss. But if you really care deeply about the product and service that you're providing, and you really pour your love into it, and you really try to make it as good as possible, and you really care a lot about the people who are coming forth to want to buy it, want to use it, want to share it, then you align yourself with the love of God, and you'll tend to get the feedback that you need, and you will tend to find the customers to support your business idea. And you'll feel good. You'll get good feedback from people. People will be very positively impacted by what you provide. And to me, that adds to the value of life. So that it is possible to not only manifest wealth, but also feel very fulfilled as far as what it is that you're providing. So as a recap, keep in mind, you have to spend some time to understand the idea that value is what draws money. People will release their money when they see value and they have a need. And sometimes it's not even a need, it's just a want. But they want what it is that you provide, and they're willing to release their money. And I say release their money because their money represents the potential. It represents energy that has not yet been experienced. So they release that money for the experience of your product or your service. You have to find something that has value to enough people that you will do well. You have to also Well, I'm suggesting that you invest time in something that has meaning to you as well. But when it comes to doing your business or your job, then you pour your love into it, but it doesn't rule your life. I don't think that's a good thing to do. So you want to make sure that it's meaningful to you such that when things get difficult, you will persist. Then you really have to, sort of be discerning about where you do it and how you do it. And you have to be willing to receive the feedback from the people who are beginning to investigate using your product or your service. Or if you're doing some investing in some sort of, properties or stocks, bonds, companies, that you test out the water and you begin to see if this looks like it's going to yield. And you have to be prepared to adjust as you recognize that your initial concepts were correct in these areas, but they were not correct in these areas, so I'm going to stop pouring money and time into these areas, and I'm just going to focus on these areas. And there's a constant refining process whereby you recognize the value, and that value is rewarded with the funds flowing to you.